South China Morning Post, 21st of February 2024, does China's outrage over the EU's train subsidy investigation threaten to derail relations? China has subsidized its products to enable them to contend on international markets and eliminate rivalry with other foreign firms. The initial comprehensive investigation disclosed by the European Union concerning a Chinese state-owned train manufacturer, which is the first of its kind to be carried out by the EU's recently enforced Foreign Subsidies Regulation, may introduce additional ambiguity into diplomatic ties and indicate a heightened endeavor to implement Brussels' de-risking approach. Analysts speculate that Friday's action against CRRC Qingdao Sifang Locomotive, a subsidiary of the world's largest rolling stock manufacturer CRRC Corporation, could cause some roughness to the bilateral investment and trade relationship. However, the blocs in China's multi-decade-long trade history will likely provide some cushion against drastic changes. However, further action is possible, as the investigation was initiated merely 5 months after the European Union began an independent inquiry into subsidies received by Chinese manufacturers of electric vehicles. The EU investigation was instigated by a contract issued by Bulgaria's Ministry of Transport and Communications. It is sufficient to purchase 20 electric push-pull trains and provides for personnel training and maintenance. The tender was valued at an estimated €610 million, $658.4 million, and CRRC Qingdao Sifang submitted a proposal of €300 million. According to the Financial Times, the bid was 47.5% lower than the bid of the nearest competitor and 46.7% lower than the projections of Bulgarian Railways. By the regulation, businesses are required to furnish notification regarding public procurement tenders that involve contracts worth over €250 million. CRRC Qingdao Sifang submitted the complete notice on January 22. By the regulation's statutory requirement of 110 days to produce an outcome, the verdict will be ascertainable by July 2 at the latest. The most severe repercussions stipulated in the regulation would preclude the organization from performing the agreement's obligations. The European Union has a distinct objective of establishing regulations to safeguard its competitive advantage and ensure economic security, said China Institute of International Studies scholar Gui Hongjian. There will be some back and forth between the two parties. Discussions, negotiations, and potentially legal proceedings will ensue. Historically significant trading partners, China and the European Union, are experiencing a transformation in their bilateral ties as the bloc endeavors to reduce its dependence on Beijing. Recent years have witnessed a deterioration in relations. In addition to other concerns, retaliatory sanctions against China for its actions in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region have impeded the ratification of the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. This significant development would have otherwise allowed European companies to enter China's market. Although both parties have tried to reduce tensions since the previous year, disagreements regarding alternative energy sources have hindered a complete thaw. Europe's consecutive investigations are also taking place in a politically charged environment, as candidates are likely to be motivated to adopt a critical posture on engagement in light of this year's elections for the European Parliament and the White House. Stephen Olson, a visiting lecturer at the Utter Institute of International Trade and senior adjunct fellow at the Pacific Forum, predicted that the European Union and China would remain close trading partners for the foreseeable future but that China would have to walk a delicate tightrope. China will feel obligated to reciprocate any actions taken by the EU, but it also seeks to strengthen trade ties with the EU as a safeguard against its trade policies becoming overly synchronized with those of the United States, he further stated. In contrast to the yearly growth of 2.4% documented in 2022, total imports and exports between China and the EU decreased 7.6% to $782.9 billion in 2023, according to data from China's General Administration of Customs. Despite China-EU trade recording consistent growth before 2022, the investigations are not the cause of the relatively distant bilateral trade relationship between the two sides, said Ding Chun, director of the Center for European Studies at Fudan University. The European Union implemented a series of restrictive investment and trade measures against China beginning in 2016, including de-risking and foreign subsidies. This resulted in an abnormal decline in trade figures last year. The European Union commenced an investigation in 2016 into Chinese subsidies for steel exported to the Union in response to a claim made by the European Steel Association that the Chinese government provided preferential lending rates and low energy charges to its steel producers. EU Competition Chief Margrethe Vestager stated on Saturday, the day after Brussels initiated its CRRC investigation, that the bloc is absolutely willing to use its array of trade instruments to combat what it perceives as unfair competition from China. The China Chamber of Commerce to the EU issued a response statement on Friday stating that the implementation and ratification of policy instruments should not result in any form of discrimination against foreign companies. The EU participated actively in public consultations on the draft legislation and the draft implementation rules on multiple occasions throughout the EU legislative process of the Foreign Subsidies Regulation and its implementing regulation, the statement read. Additionally, the business group stated that it has submitted multiple forms of feedback to the European Commission and EU legislative bodies, voicing the concerns of member companies regarding reporting obligations that it deems unreasonable and were imposed after the implementation of the regulation. According to Dong Jinyue, a BBVA research senior economist, if the EU adopts the same aggressive posture as the United States, the outcome will be lose-lose for the EU. The principal international conflict at the moment is the competition between China and the United States. The EU's primary strategy is to pursue its economic development and refrain from taking sides, as the EU economy faces an inherent risk of near-zero growth or even recession, she further stated. Shen Dingley, a Shanghai-based international relations scholar, further stated that the World Trade Organization is just one of many avenues through which a dispute can be resolved. Regardless of the position taken by either side, the EU requires the initiation of an impartial inspection that can elucidate any discrepancies, he stated. Chinese cooperation in the investigation would assist in the development of more favorable conditions for bilateral trade and investment by resolving inconsistencies with facts.